Justin Steele was tremendous on Friday, and the Cubs found a way to win a series against the Angels. We talk about a packed weekend on the north side coming up next.
You are Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Sam Olber, and I'm a lifelong fan, taking my passion into a discussion with you. Almost forgot the pointers there on all things Cubs. Thank you for being part of the show and making Locked On Cubs your first listen every day. And the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day, like the video, and comment anything below. Today's episode of Locked On Cubs is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked-on. Welcome in, everybody, to a solo episode of Locked On Cubs. If you didn't already know, Matt will be out of town this week. I will have a couple of guests with me this week. We're going to have Ty for Tuesday to talk prospects. We're going to have, I believe, Michael Cerami is going to join us Wednesday to talk just about the Cubs in general. He's great from Bleacher Nation. If you haven't had a chance to check out his work, it'll be a little bit of a weirder week just because Tuesday night after the game, I won't be able to go live, but I still will post a show later because I have some stuff going on. But we'll get as much game coverage as we can, and it'll still be a 5-episode week. And I think we're going to have a good time here, and it's nice to be able to start the week off on a positive note with the Cubs winning a series. And there's been a lot of negativity, obviously, around the Cubs, and because we have to cover the Cubs, there's been a lot of negativity on the show. So I want to keep it positive today. Cubs won 2 out of 3, but I have to preface what I'm going to say with is that I thought they needed a sweep. They had to have a 4-2 homestand. They didn't, and I still think they're in just as bad of a spot standings-wise, heading into Monday than they were just last week. They didn't really make up any ground this week, but they're coming off a series win, and that's nice. I'm going to leave Friday's game for a later segment because I want to talk about Justin Steele in depth. Let's start fresh with Sunday. Hayden Wesneski was really, really good on Sunday. I actually kind of labeled him part of my Cubs Enigma Club. Seiya Suzuki's in that club as well. And what I mean by that is just guys, I have no idea what to expect out of these guys from a day-to-day basis. They could, Wesneski could give up 4 home runs. He could have a shutout. He could do whatever. And I understand the Angels aren't a great lineup, and they're pretty easy to navigate around, but it's still the big leagues. And he threw 6 1/3 shutout innings after really, really struggling his last, 20 innings or so, especially with the long ball. So good for him for performing there. I thought the Cubs did a pretty good job on Sunday against Soriano, the Angels. Heavy sinker baller, 97, 98 miles an hour, sitting there, even touched 99. So I knew the Cubs weren't going to slug much, but they were able to get some hits, move some runners along. I thought Nico Horner had a really nice day. His box score may not scream out that he had a great day to you, but I thought he had a really nice sac fly. Tough guy to elevate with a man on third, 1 out, and then with a man on second, nobody out. He made a concerted effort to hit the ball to the right side and was rewarded with a base hit. And good days for Miguel Amaya and Dansby Swanson, 2 guys that were really struggling heading into Sunday. So it was nice to see. And then Michael Busch, the big left-on-left home run to really put the game away. Saturday's game was basically the exact opposite of Sunday's game. It was one of the worst performances of the season for the Cubs when you actually take the offense, defense, and starting pitching. Cubs walked a bunch of guys, hit a bunch of guys. Had some errors, some misplays in the field, and then offensively only had 4 singles all 9 innings and got shut out. Kyle Hendricks left that game injured. We're going to talk about that later on. But it was really kind of the story of 2 complete different days, Saturday and Sunday for the Cubs. The one thing I want to talk about as we, I don't want to say fade into the season where, our playoff hopes are, not where we want them to be, but, kind of just fade into talking about big picture stuff. The one thing I really want to discuss, I'm going to ask Michael Cerami about this on Wednesday, is just like the analytics and how to judge a player. Because when you look at the Cubs right now, especially after this week, like Ian Happ individually, just looking at the individual stats, is having a nice season. Seiya Suzuki, individually, offense only, is having a fine season. Bellinger on offense, not slugging the way you'd hope, but he's not having a bad offensive year. Michael Busch is in Rookie of the Year consideration, and I think he's been really, really solid this season. But yet, between the months of May and June, the Cubs were the worst offense in baseball. And I always come back to, I just think sometimes we live and die by these numbers, the WRC plus, the OPS, the WOBAs, all these things. And I come back to always this example. And I know you can't control when you hit. So you can't control when guys are on base. You can't control when guys aren't on. But most of the time, everybody's going to get their fair chances. And when you look at baseball as a whole, if you're up 15-1 in the ninth inning and you're facing a position player, and you hit a grand slam, that's going to do more for your WOBA. It's going to do more for your WRC plus. It's going to do more for your OPS than being down 3-2 in the ninth inning, facing a guy like Emmanuel Clase, man on second, 2 outs, and you find a way to fight off a ball into right field for a game-tying base hit. And I think the Cubs are a really good example of a team that does have some solid individual players, and by the end of the year might have some solid individual performances. But it's about the collective, and it's about when you get your hits. And I know people don't like that, but there's some really good hitters. Manny Ramirez is a really good example. He said before, early in games in lower leverage spots, he would look bad on purpose against certain pitches. So the team thought that they could get him on that pitch later on when the game was on the line. And I think right now, offensively, the Cubs are starting to show some signs outside of Saturday of really turning it around and being the offense we thought they could be. But at the end of the day, it doesn't take away that for 2 consecutive months, the team really, really struggled. And, you need somebody during those times, or a couple of guys, to lift the team and help get you through it, so you don't find yourself in this situation where your backs are totally against the wall and you're treading water just trying to survive and stay in a race. And it happened last year in May as well, for the most part. And you combine that with the bullpen and things like that. So I think one thing to look for is just how to judge these players and really emphasize situations more than we have. And I think the Cubs need to do that as an organization to try and avoid these long stretches, because you could say what you want about these players. They are not bad enough to be the worst offense in baseball. I've said that all year on the show. May and June, they may not be an elite offense. They may not be an elite baseball team, but they should have never been one of the worst offenses in baseball. And they have to figure out how that happened and how it got to be at that point, because it really hurt their season in combination with a bunch of other stuff. But good stuff on Sunday. I thought the week, Ian Happ had just a really strong week, turned his season around. Michael Busch has been great. And the thing about Busch, too, he hit a home run against the lefty on Sunday. He's hitting over 300 against lefties on the season, albeit a small sample size. Let's get away from the binder a little bit and stop hitting Patrick Wisdom second against lefties and either sitting Michael Busch or hitting him down in the order. I understand it. I get the logic. Wisdom hits lefties better than righties. If a lefty starter's pitching, you want him to see that lefty starter as much as you can. But sometimes you got to just use common sense, guys. The binder doesn't see what we see. It's just numbers, right? You got to use your eyes. You got to use your eyes. Patrick Wisdom's batting like 189. He's 5 for his last 30 something. Okay. Those are the decisions I want to see. And it's not just the Cubs around the game of baseball that just frustrate me. What do the Cubs have to lose? Maybe Michael Busch is really good. Maybe Michael Busch can hit lefties. Maybe Michael Busch is a guy that you can play every day, and he can become a really, really good player for this Cubs team in the future. That's something I'm watching every day. Having him sit against lefties when the Cubs are 7 games under 500, or even bat 7th against them, let's see what he's got. Because what I know is it's probably a better option than Patrick Wisdom has been. So those are things that just kind of irk me. I really thought Miles Mastroboni had a nice weekend. I know he made an error on Sunday, but he had a really good defensive game on Friday, which we're going to talk about in a second. He hasn't really gotten much of a chance offensively. He kind of just gets an at bat here and there. That's his job. But I thought he was really good defensively. at third, and it opened my eyes about, Morrell at third, and that's whole situation. I think, next week and through the rest of the year, you're really going to hope guys like Dansby could turn it around, and Morrell, guys that have struggled, and Miguel Amaya got some time off for most of this later week into the weekend, and then came back Sunday and had a really good game. So that was really nice to see. Cubs found a way to win 2 out of 3 against the Angels. They are now 7 games under 500. I believe they're still 6 games back in the wild card. So they're going to have a lot of work to do heading into this week. They go to Baltimore, which we'll talk about tomorrow. And then a really important series if you want to have any life post All-Star break. You're going to have to find a way to go to St. Louis and win 3 out of 4 to make a statement and gain some ground. But one thing Matt and I have talked about on the show a lot is the need for a star, the need for a consistent guy. So offensively, you don't go in a rut like you did in May and June. And I think the Cubs might have one of those guys on the pitching staff, and we're going to talk about that coming up next. But first, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. Pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and then watch the winnings roll in. Baseball season is well underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and then add them to your Prize Picks entry. If you want to get a good prop bet, go with Michael Busch right now. He's hot. He has a 26-game on-base streak. Prize Picks is really simple to play with your entries taking less than 60 seconds to submit, turning $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps of your screen. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKDOWNMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's a first deposit match up to $100 by using code LOCKDOWNMLB. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. This episode is also brought to you by Tax Network USA. Here on Locked On Cubs, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that big parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit taxnetworkusa.com/locked on. That's TNUSA.com/locked on. See the link in this episode description below. The Cubs play the Orioles at 5:35 Central Time on Tuesday, and you can hear every pitch of the Cubs' hometown broadcast on SiriusXM by searching Cubs on the SXM app. On Friday, Justin Steele was absolutely tremendous for the Cubs. He threw a complete game, allowed 2 hits, 1 earned run, and the Cubs took their first opener of a series in quite a long time. And I just, I was concerned about Justin Steele a little bit because at the end of the year last year, and when I say concerned, I mean very mildly. Like I still thought he was going to be a really good pitcher, but the word ace gets thrown around a lot, in baseball. And that's kind of where I was just a little bit concerned because at the end of the year last year, he started to give up the long ball a little bit. And then at the beginning of the year, after his injury, which played a huge part, he gets injured. Then he comes back against the Pirates, gives up the long ball again, back-to-back starts. And you're just wondering, was it kind of a little bit of an aberration last year with him just keeping the ball in the park? Because we know what Justin Steele wants to do. Early in his career as a starter, he had trouble being efficient, right? So he made an adjustment to just really trust his stuff, that cut right fastball and that slider, and just attack in the zone and just let his stuff do the work for him. And it worked really well for pretty much all last year. But you always just got a little bit concerned because when Steele would struggle, there was just a lot of balls, in the zone with 2 strikes. And, he wasn't getting super punished for them until the end of last year and the beginning of this year. So I just kind of said to myself, is that who Justin Steele is, or is it kind of just a fluke? And Steele remained very confident and was like, yeah, I'm pitching really well. I feel good. The results are going to come. I just got it. These fly balls, they shouldn't be leaving the yard like this. And he was right. And since that last start against the Pirates, he's been the Cubs' best starter. I know Imanaga is probably going to be their all-star, which we'll find out here in a few minutes before I record. But I know that Imanaga has been their best pitcher this year, and he hasn't been hurt, like Steele has. But Justin Steele is the best pitcher on this team, and he's the exact type of guy we're looking for on the offensive side of the ball, because now you see Justin Steele go through just a sliver of struggles, and he came back and he's better than ever. And to me, that's the definition of a star. That's the definition of in this day and age when there's so much volatility in the game of baseball, and you just don't know. You really don't know what you're going to get year to year from like 95% of these guys. Justin Steele is now in that circle for me where I just am going to pencil him in to be really solid. He may have a hiccup here and there, but he is a really good starting pitcher, and I would say even great. And, how would I compare him to an offensive player? Just a guy that's another level to what we have right now. Instead of a guy, that hovers around an 800 OPS offensively, a guy between like an 860 and a 900 OPS. And if he gets off to a slow start, eventually he's going to get there. Solid all-star type numbers year in, year out. And I know this is only year 2 of Justin Steele really being an elite guy, but you could just tell it's sustainable. The confidence, the way he pitches. And then you add in his attitude and his leadership and what he did against the Brewers. And when you really dig into his starts, he's actually pitched better than his 2.95 ERA suggests he has. He's had a lot of really bad luck, some not great defense around him. I think he's actually thrown the ball better this year so far than he did last year, even though he had 16 wins last year and only has 1 this year. That tells you as much as you need to know about the win statistic in baseball. But I just think Justin Steele's been awesome. I wanted to give him his own segment, an own shout out, because we've talked about a lot of guys that have struggled this year. It's a long list, but Justin Steele is not one of them. He is one of the guys that I look at as the backbone of this team, the core of this team, if you will. I put that in air quotes because I'm not really sure what the core is, but one guy that isn't going anywhere at the trade deadline, and one guy that I feel like the Cubs can really, really build around is Justin Steele. He is I feel like he's going to be one of those Cub for life guys. And I'm really happy he's on the team. He reminds me a lot, not in his pitch mix. They're very different pitchers with the way they have success, but he reminds me a lot of John Lester with his approach to the game, his bulldog mentality. He's a very fun guy to watch pitch, and still a very, outliery type of an anomaly with the way he pitches. It's that cut ride fastball that from the left side comes into righties, really hard to square up. A lot of balls on the ground to the left side where Mastroboni was awesome on Friday. And then he's got that slider that has 2 different shapes to it. The big sweeping slider, or the one that's kind of more of like a get me over, that's a little bit sharper of a break. And that's what he's doing. And we could sit here and talk about, man, should he add a changeup? Should he add a third pitch? I don't think he needs to change anything, because he's been really, really awesome for the Chicago Cubs. Kyle Hendricks was not so awesome on Saturday afternoon and had to leave early with some injuries. And there is a lot of injuries to cover for the Chicago Cubs. And we're going to talk about that coming up next. First, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports, if you couldn't tell. I love sports probably more than I love anything on this planet. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have wound down in the NBA and NHL, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The Cubs had a lot of injuries this weekend that they had to deal with. And I feel like I am almost a beat reporter at this point, trying to get you all of them. So let's talk about Kyle Hendricks first, because this is one that I really didn't understand. Apparently on Saturday morning, Kyle Hendricks woke up. On Friday he had back pain. And it was all an issue on Friday. And then Saturday morning, he even said himself he had trouble walking, and directly said that pitching was actually easier than walking. His back locked up on him. And somehow, some way, he still was able to go pitch, and they let him throw. And I just didn't understand that. You got a complete game from Justin Steele on Friday. You have an off day on Monday. Just make it a bullpen game. Why risk something like that? This is the Cubs with their injuries have been very weird to me the last couple years. I've never heard of a guy that is struggling to walk take the mound on a Saturday afternoon at Wrigley Field. I thought that was crazy. So we will have to monitor that with Kyle Hendricks and hope that he's going to be okay. Yency Almonte elected to have season-ending shoulder surgery, so we won't see him the rest of the year. Big loss when you add up him, Julian Merriweather, Adbert Alzolay struggling, and then now being injured. That's 3 of the 4 main guys that are really a big part of the Cubs bullpen. Mark Leiter Jr. seems like he's going to be set to return here pretty soon, hopefully before the break, as well as Javier Assad. Craig Counsell said that Javier Assad should be able to, they're optimistic that he's going to be able to contribute in the weekend series in St. Louis, but said do not expect Ben Brown back at all before the All-Star break. PCA, I've never seen this injury list. It's unbelievable. PCA got hurt the July 3rd game. It looks like he had like a cut on his thumb that swelled. He's not on the injured list, hopefully back on Tuesday. Colton Brewer, after a really rough outing on Saturday, punched a wall and broke his hand. He headed to the 60-day IL, which brought up Hunter Biggie from the Cubs AAA system, who has just had a wonderful resurgence in AAA this year. ERA in the low 1, striking out a bunch of guys. We'll be really excited to watch him have a chance to take the mound for the Cubs the rest of this season, because these are the guys the Cubs need to hit on. Hunter Biggie, Porter Hodge, Luke Little, Daniel Palencia. These guys that have plus stuff that haven't been able to harness it at the big league level. If they could find a way to start harnessing that and be consistent, they have the stuff to be the next dominant reliever. The Cubs need to find one of these guys that's going to be a dominant reliever. ERA less than 2. Strikeouts 13, 14 per 9 innings. You put them in the game, 9th inning up a run on the road, you feel like it's nailed down. They need to discover one of these guys. Maybe, just maybe, it could be Hunter Biggie. Maybe it'll be Luke Little. Porter Hodge has been better lately. Those are some things to watch the rest of this season for these young arms. Wrapping up, Matt Shaw's been kind of in and out of the lineup. He's been out of the lineup for a bit here at Double-A Tennessee. There were rumors that Matt Shaw was going to be called up, and I think he was even like on the AAA website for a bit. I'm about to look and see if he was in the lineup on Sunday, but now all of a sudden he's not. There's no games on Sunday, but we'll have to get to the bottom of that. I don't want to report anything on Shaw because I haven't heard anything, but I hope that he's back in the lineup soon, because he's really been able to turn it around for the Cubs. And, I personally think, Cade Horton's hurt right now. I personally think he's the prospect I'm most excited about. And so hopefully everything's all good with him. Speaking of prospects, we will be talking to Ty Lewin on Monday for Tuesday's show about all these prospects. I'm going to ask Ty about Matt Shaw, see if he's heard anything, see if he's excited. We're going to talk about Ballesteros. We're going to talk about Triantos and, the rest of these Cubs prospects. So Overall, Cubs take 2 out of 3 against the Los Angeles Angels. Really would have liked to sweep. I really wanted to have the broom out for my first solo show of the week, but the Cubs do win the series and have a lot of difficult games coming up against the Orioles and Cardinals. We'll see you guys tomorrow with Ty. Thank you so much for checking out this edition of Locked On Cubs. You give us 20 to 30 minutes and we'll give you all things Cubs with a laugh or two along the way. Be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube, smash the like button for the algorithm, and leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. I'm Sam Olber, and this has been a solo episode of Locked On Cubs. Go Cubbies.